What is the Wild West? Surely these words immediately bring to mind dashing cowboys, bloodthirsty Indians, and a gang of desperate thugs. Their whole life is endless skirmishes with each other, in between which they drink in lousy salons. Few sheriffs can ensure justice in the vast wastelands of the Wild West, so Mr. Colt serves as the only protection. At least, this image for us, ordinary people, is replicated by mass culture in the form of Hollywood westerns. But how far is all this from reality? What was the Wild West really like? Let's try to figure it out. The history of the Wild West began on April 30th, 1803, when the government of the young United States decided to purchase French Louisiana, a vast territory in the American West. The Americans bought more than 2 million square kilometers of land for the ridiculously small amount of $15 million. Most of the purchased territory was a completely wild area, which belonged to France only by right of the discoverer. Immediately after the purchase of the third, United States President Thomas Jefferson decided to organize an expedition to the West, the task of which was to find a river route across America that would connect two oceans, the Pacific and the Atlantic. The expedition led by Lewis and Clark crosses all western territories and reaches the treasure ocean. During its journey, the expedition brought many Indian tribes under the sovereignty of the United States. The result of this campaign was the discovery of many fertile lands that required their settlement. Thousands of colonists from the East Coast rushed west in search of a better life. These were mainly peasants and artisans, but among them, there were also religious minorities fleeing persecution. Such, for example, were the Mormons, who founded many of their isolated settlements in the West. The first settlers walked west along the so-called trails, following one after another and founding cities exactly along the line of this route. Thus, a convenient and proven road was created for the next settlers, as well as many settlements ready to provide food and a roof over the traveler's head. Soon the number of settlers became so high that the United States government began to seriously consider further westward expansion. Already 15 years after the Louisiana Purchase, the Americans received from the British vast territories on the west coast, south of modern Canada, thereby legally consolidating their presence on the western tip of the American continent. Further expansion was prevented only by Mexico, which received all Spanish territories in the region. But this does not stop the settlers, who are growing in number every year. They penetrate Texas in large groups and soon begin to make up a significant part of its population. This is the reason for the United States annexed Texas in 1845. In turn, this led to a war with Mexico, which ended with a landslide victory for the Americans and the annexation of almost the entire West Coast, including the richest California, to the United States. It was this region, lying west of Louisiana, that would become known as the Wild West. If Mexico was not particularly interested in its former territories, which were considered useless wastelands, then the United States approached the issue more responsibly. They thoroughly explored new territories and, to their great joy, discovered reserves of gold. California's natural wealth turned out to be so enormous that it almost immediately led to the emergence of a gold rush. A wide variety of people began to flock en masse to this region, the most remote from the central states. Some of them hoped to get rich in gold mines, while others hoped to rob those who had already become rich. However, most of the gold lands lay on the territory of various Indian tribes, who also quickly realized the value of gold. They were ready to fight for every inch of their land. This is where numerous clashes arose between gold miners and Indians. But California still prospered. Residents were swimming in money that they had nothing to spend on. In many ways, it was for this reason that the first transcontinental railroad was built, connecting the Wild West with the central states. The rapid development of the West began, and new cities demanded food, which, on the one hand, led to the creation of many ranches in Texas, whose shepherds, known as cowboys, were engaged in rutting and breeding cattle. On the other hand, the mass shooting of bison, which carelessly roamed the American prairies. The most famous hunter was Buffalo Bill, who personally killed more than 4,000 bison. By the way, cowboys became the hallmark of the Wild West for a reason. Driving cattle often took long days, during which the shepherds were left to their own devices. There were no sheriffs or soldiers on the plains, but there were bandits and Indians in large numbers. For the former, livestock was a source of income, and for the latter, it was a source of food. However, after completing the work, the cowboys themselves often turned into bandits. Having received the coveted money, many of them became drunkards and began to go on rampages, which forced many cities to hire special people to protect them from roaming cowboys. The cowboys also fought with each other. Disputes over pasture for livestock often escalated into full-fledged wars. Such were, for example, the wars in Johnson and Lincoln counties, in which thousands of cowboys took part on each side. Until the end of the 19th century, the justice system in the western states was almost completely absent. The shortage of sheriffs led to the emergence of bounty hunters for wanted criminals. The most famous bounty hunter was James "Wild Bill" Hickok. He had 50 thugs on his account. The situation with justice further deteriorated with the outbreak of the Civil War in 1861. Texas sided with the Confederacy, while California remained loyal to Washington. The area between these two largest states became a battleground. There was no law or order here. However, the end of the Civil War, the rapid development of the region, and the railway system that connected the West with the civilized states eventually did their job. The period of the Wild West turned out to be bright, but short. Just half a century after these lands were annexed to the United States, large factories and megacities had already appeared on them. Cowboys and bounty hunters gave way to office clerks and laborers. And strangely, the Wild West migrated from west to east. The legendary buffalo hunter Buffalo Bill, along with other legends of the Wild West, organized a show, which successfully traveled throughout the eastern states and probably contributed most to the popularity of the Wild West in popular culture. In the 20th century, the nascent Hollywood did not fail to take advantage of this. And now the phenomenon of the Wild West is known throughout the world. Thanks to everyone who watched this video to the end. To find out about the latest releases, you just need to subscribe to the channel and click on the bell. Also, leave your thoughts in the comments and give it a thumbs up. See you soon.